Welcome to another edition of Rider Nation Station, presented by American Manufacturing Solutions, your total logistics partner, investing in Rider Nation Station and St. Mary's, Ohio, as well as Plus One Professionals Real Estate, your local real estate agency, and to our other fine sponsors. According to bestplaces.net, Auglaize County's violent crime rate is 7.7, whereas the U.S. national average is 22.7. The good news is that Auglaize County has a relatively low crime rate and an even lower murder rate. However, murder does happen in Auglaize County, and when it does, justice is almost always served. But Auglaize County has this one unsolved case that dates back to December 29th, 1978. Roger Parent was murdered, and the murderer may still be out amongst us. The Parent family, the community, and law enforcement are still looking for closure of this horrific night some 41 years ago. Today, we are utilizing social media to cast out a line to attempt to catch additional information to help solve this case. It is our hope to see if memories can be jogged, or perhaps encourage individuals who have withheld information to come forward, anonymously or not, to help the Sheriff's Office bring finality to this case. With me today is Sheriff Al Solomon and Chief Deputy Mike Peterson. Thanks for being on Rider Nation Station.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about the case, let's talk about the happenings of the world, nation, and St. Mary's on the day of this heinous crime. According to the December 29, 1978 Evening Leader, Iranian troops opened fire on protesters. Congress directs a study of Grand Lake St. Mary's. The 8th-ranked Clemson Tigers were 2-point favorites over the unranked Buckeyes in tonight's Gator Bowl. Papa Artie's advertising all the fish, fries, corn on the cob, and salad you care to eat for $2.99. And Crown was advertising for key punch operators. Then, when St. Marian's picked up the December 29, 1978 Evening Leader, they read, Ohio State University's Woody Hayes is fired following the Gator Bowl when Hayes struck Clemson nose guard Charlie Bowman in the face minutes before the Buckeyes' 17-15 loss to the Tigers. And Clemson was 2-point favored. And then Roger Parent, 33, was found shot dead at the P&S carryout late last night, a victim of apparent robbery and homicide. Well, let's get into this case here, and I think the most useful tool in an investigation is identifying the facts of the case. So what are the facts of this December 29th, 1978 murder?
The facts of the case are quite simple. That Friday night, towards closing time, Roger was shot and killed. Some money was taken from the store, and that really is just the plain, simple truth of that night.
And they think the time frame was close to midnight, and
yes.
Nobody really heard a gunshot that we're aware of, but there happened to be a customer trying to get a snack or something right before closing that discovered Roger's body. Right.
Customer came, did not see Roger right away, ended up going further into the store, finding Roger with what appeared to be a gunshot wound. EMS and Sheriff's Office responded. EMS gets on scene, and their first priority is, of course, life-saving. They transport him, get him to the ER. He ends up not recovering from the injury. The investigation starts, and it has never stopped since that day.
And it's never stopped since December 29th of 1978. And, we've got some different technology that was back in 1978 versus what we are dealing with today. And I believe that I read that the customer who initially found the body exited to get her husband to come in, and I believe he was checking for vitals, and then called for help, and some time had elapsed with all of that, and And at that time, 911 probably wasn't even in effect. So you're
Right. It was
calling
simple.
the office number
Yep.
and
Simple calls from the landlines. The customer came over, found him, ran back to her residence. Her and her husband came back, checked him, made the calls. There wasn't any cell phones then, so they called. So there had been some time there that was a little bit of a delay. EMS gets on scene, and still priority one is life-saving. So they transport him to the hospital to try to do everything they can.
Okay, so this investigation starts. Let's talk about who was law enforcement at this time that were responsible for trying to put the pieces of this case together and bring justice.
Sheriff Noak was the sheriff at the time, Sheriff Jim Noak. And I guess the main investigator at the time on the case was investigator John Isley. They called him investigators then. So.
And he was an investigator working for the sheriff's
Correct.
office at that
Yep.
time. Okay, and then so this, for those of you who are uncertain about where P&S carryout is, it's just outside of city limits in Villanova. Current day, 2020, kind of right behind Ex-Carre Mexican
Correct.
restaurant. Then I think the veterinarian's office, and it's the next building to the west. P&S for Parent and Sullivan
Yep.
carry out. Back in my day, I would have known it as BJ's, I believe,
Right.
carry out, and so they respond, and probably you had St. Mary's Police Department
St.
that was
Mary's did respond.
responding
Yep.
as well and helping out with the investigation. How is the investigation process similar, but probably more importantly different in 1978 than what it is in 2020?
Well, you naturally did not have the technology that you do now. You didn't have DNA then. You didn't have any of those things. You didn't have the video crime scene where you can construct a crime scene, go back over it. You didn't have any. Those guys back then didn't have any of those tools to work with. It was basic photography, mostly black and white photography at that time, or all black and white. So we're talking nothing close to the technology we have today.
Mm-hmm. Which obviously makes it a little more difficult 41 years later trying to piece this together with some of the rudimentary practices that were available at that time. But that doesn't mean that you give up the ship and
No.
you're going to work towards getting this solved. Do you still speak to some of the law enforcement that initially worked this case, and does it still impact them that this is still an unsolved case in Auglaize County, the only unsolved murder case in Auglaize County?
Oh yeah, you always think of the family, but as the chief could tell you, that we've had two right now, and one very recent where we brought anybody and everybody that worked in some faction back at that time. We're either at the scene, whether that be St. Mary's officers, ourselves, prosecutors, whatever. We've brought those people together twice now, and one time most recently, just to jog their memory. Chief tells them what we have up to this point, the evidence that we might have, the leads that we have checked and ran down, and we're trying to jog their memories too, because the reports were totally different back then either. Also, a report that on a murder case might be pages and pages long now, and while that was in depth back at that time, for that time period, it's nothing like a report would look today.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important thing, that you are trying to keep the best that you can, the facts of the case and the memories fresh. I can't remember 41 minutes ago. You're trying to do 41 plus years ago of what this case.
And these guys were, anytime we've called them, anytime the chief's had contact with them, there's no hesitation. Mm-hmm. To answer your question truthfully, they want to see this solved, not just for themselves, but for the community,
Yep.
for the parent family.
For the parent family,
yep. It bothers them as much as it bothers us.
And one of the things that you have to deal with as so much time has elapsed is not only, the lack of memory of the night and the detail, but probably some have passed.
Mm-hmm.
And people who maybe had information have passed. don't even know maybe the actual suspect has passed. So how do you deal with not only the long time that's gone by and elapsed, but that potentially you've got people who have information that are no longer with us?
You just keep digging, keep asking. Someone knows something. We always just request if they think we know it and they don't want to bother us type thing, to please call anyway. I'm more than happy to sit down and speak with anybody about it. More than happy to keep anybody anonymous. We've had that over the years too. So we just kind of keep going. It's never going to be closed until we get that truth, the answer. Bring whoever to justice for what happened. Whether it's a year from now or 10 years from now, we just keep fighting and keep going.
And that's kind of, a cold case. It's happened in the past and it's been worked, and then you're not getting new information, but you occasionally do get some new information.
Right.
And I think that's the whole point of this Rider Nation vodcast today, is try to, through social media, cast that line, and whatever information, as minute as it might be,
Yes.
you want to hear it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if people think that, that's been reported long ago, report it. I had read somewhere where some community member the day after said, I remember seeing a guy walking the East Bank and they had a shotgun. Maybe that was a little more common practice in 1978 than what it is today, but that may have been a piece of the puzzle to help put it together. So anything, if you're watching and you have any memories, anything that you can remember around that time frame, and please help the sheriff's office by contacting them and see whether or not they have that information and if they can continue to utilize it.
One thing the chief or myself, both of us, and other detectives or deputies over the years, we'll talk to family members of somebody who maybe that family member is deceased now, was alive back at that time, and they told another family member something. The chief, other detectives, myself, we've ran things like that down over the years. We'll talk to anybody about this.
So if Grandpa or Grandma happened to talk
You betcha.
around the kitchen table one day, you'd like to hear that as well.
Yep, I've talked to employees that worked at P&S back in the day. Those employees are no longer with us, but I've talked to their kids, I've talked to their family members about former employees as well. So if anybody's willing to sit down and talk, we'll be more than happy to sit around and talk about that. And the other bars that are close by too, Surf Club, Papa Artie's, you mentioned that earlier.
Villa
That
Cerise.
jogs memories. Villa Cerise is another one. So just sit back and think what was going on back in that day, and more than willing to sit down and talk with anybody.
Mm-hmm. And Chief, I think maybe now is the time to talk about the dedication that the Sheriff's Office has had to track down information. You just always don't find that here in Auglaize County, and sometimes you have to travel to gather that information.
Right. I've been just myself, and I know some of the other detectives have been all over Ohio as well. I've been into different states tracking this down, as recent as taking a trip to Oklahoma, trying to get some information and talking to some guys that were kind of doing the same type of robbery and things like that way back in the day. Still alive, trying to go back out there and just get any information I can from them. So there are no boundaries to the extent that we're going to go to be able to get this solved.
And I think it's key to say that the law enforcement back when this murder happened did the same thing. As I had read in the newspaper where there was a triple murder in Indiana, I believe, of some railroad employees, and they were just trying to see whether or not there was a connection between this murder and that triple murder, and so they worked that to find out that there was no connection.
Yes.
But sometimes you have to chase those leads to find out that it really didn't lead you anywhere.
Yep.
Right. Sometimes it's a rumor. Sometimes it's not really finding the truth, or the suspect. It's more of just squashing the rumor, but that has to be done too, because if we don't do that now, 5 years from now, somebody's going to say, hey, I called, you didn't do anything about it. That's the last thing we want to hear. But it also helps investigators if this lasts another 3, 4, 5, 10 years, they can look back and spend time on something else rather than chasing down a rumor that we should be chasing down now.
And you want that integrity and reputation, that if there is some type of rumor or evidence, memory, that you are going to track it down.
Right.
It's just not going to be a lost cause by the person who called that in. I know this is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it. Is it worth the time, effort, and money to continue to track this down 41 and a half years later?
Oh, it absolutely is, without a doubt.
Every day.
Without a doubt.
Every day. We don't get enough leads. We, like the chief has said, I've said, you've said, we will run down anything. We will talk to anybody. We'll naturally make the time to do that. This is about some ending for the parent family. Let's solve this, and let's take the people in this county, people in St. Mary's, and let's solve it together.
Mm-hmm. And I think there was a community movement back in 1978, maybe early into 1979, where a group of people and industry and organizations pooled money together. And I think the Chamber of Commerce was responsible for handling that money for, if there was information that led to the arrest of the suspect, that they were going. I think I read in early 1979 they had raised up to $5,000 for the reward money for this case. So the community bound together, because everybody's impacted when something like this happens in a small town, small county, and so unfortunately that money never got to be distributed to somebody. But
you're talking about a husband, family, a dad, a brother. You're talking about a businessman, a citizen of St. Mary's. So it affects more than just a few people. It affects the entire area. And here we are, 41 years, just trying to keep it on the surface, trying to get them tips and leads to come in, just trying to keep it going to get the ending.
Recollection is that there was someone that had seen somebody, either, I can't remember, in the store or outside the store, perhaps both, leading up to the time frame. And this is 1978. Maybe we have some technology for security cameras, but really not around here. We don't have smartphones that people can take pictures immediately. So the technology at hand at this particular point in time is that person has to remember the details of whom they believe they saw, and then work with an artist to provide a sketch, which we have that sketch we're going to show right now, that was published in the January 5th, 1979 Evening Leader. Was that too long of time to elapse, albeit that's the technology that we had? And is that sketch still relevant today, 41 and a half years later?
Right, the sketch is still relevant just because several customers in and out that night throughout the years, whether me or some of the other investigators have talked to those customers, whether it was that night or the next day. And this is what they remember, and some of the customers we can account for. And this is one customer in the store that night that we cannot account for. We don't know who this person is. One of our customers seen this particular unknown person, and it was a few days later when they were able to get the customer and a police artist sketch together to get a composite of what they felt this person looks like. So this is the person that we still need to identify and talk with to find out, are they ultimately responsible for what happened, or were they just another customer in the store? So it is relevant. We like showing it just to try to jog some memories, because back in the day, it's a different style hat this person is wearing. Maybe it wasn't an everyday hat for this person. Maybe it was just a hat for him to walk in to conceal his identity a little bit. But very relevant. A week later, it was an Evening Leader, you asked, the composite. This incident happened late Friday night, so obviously they're doing the scene, they're talking with all the customers, they're trying to get everything they can. Everything's a big rush, I'm sure. So getting it published in the paper a few days, maybe 5, 6, 7 days later, I think back at that time frame is really good.
Okay.
Today, I think with the technology, it'd be on Facebook everywhere. Probably within a few hours, hopefully, and maybe if we had video and stuff like that, that would be out there as well.
And to the credit of the witness that worked with the artist, I think there was a delay because when the witness saw the sketch, they said, nah, it's not quite right. And so worked with the artist once again to modify it. And so good for that witness instead of just, okay, yeah, let's just move on with things. Nope, they felt confident that the second version was a lot more of a resemblance of what they recalled from that night. And so that was another delay.
Yes, and that's tough when you're trying to explain or describe a person and have an unknown person next to you drawing what you are seeing but they've never seen. You can only imagine how difficult that is to try to get something similar in your mind now on paper that someone else is drawing. That's tough. Today we got Photoshop and all that good stuff, but back then it was tough. We're still relevant. I still like showing that photo out there because you just never know.
So again, we're just trying to cast this line and see if there's any bit of information that can be brought to the surface and utilized to solve this case. So what I want to ask the two of you is, what do you want to convey to somebody watching who might have some information but they think, that's old news, old hat, they already have it? I know we touched on this again, but I think it's worth stating one more time.
Right. I've talked to a lot of people that have said, I thought maybe you already knew that. That's why I've never called. I thought this case was solved. I hear that as well. They don't realize that this is still an unsolved murder. I hear, we think the case is closed, so we don't want to call and bother you. Nothing like that at all needs to go through their head. The first and only thing is call with information. You're not going to bother us. The case is still ongoing. Any information is good. No information is too small. And if we've already heard it, I may even tell them, I've heard that before, but let me hear your version. Sure. Let me hear some different things because maybe it'll put a different spin on what I already know. And sometimes it's a relief to get it off their chest as well, to say, I've thought about it for 35, 40 years, and I just need to tell somebody. Well, we will be that somebody. Just come out, sit, listen, and talk about the old days. I was 5. I don't remember this, but I remember growing up in St. Mary's. This is just one of them things that it's the history. We just need to sit down and talk, and no information is too small.
Chief pretty much said it all. We're not, if you tell us something, Chief's already mentioned that, but if you're telling us something that maybe some of the information we'll have, maybe some of it we won't. And that's that information that we don't have, maybe a different name, maybe somebody that we've talked to over the years says, well, go talk to these people, but a name is added. And those are the kind of things we're running down. If you really want to remain anonymous, we will do that. It helps us to have a name to work on. We're not going to publicize that name in the news when you tell us that information. We're going to try to keep it close to the best. That's why, actually, we don't want to give a bunch of information out about the case. We want somebody to tell us what the story is, what they know is the story, so we can break that down.
And there have been a lot of names that have been provided, and you've tracked those down. What about somebody has information and they were scared to death back in 1978 and 1979, and they may be equally as scared today to divulge that information to you today? What do you say to somebody that might be watching and is teeter-tottering of, do I or don't I, because I'm scared to provide that information?
Right, and I've talked to people like that. Just like in this broadcast, we don't mention any names but Roger's name. We keep those names anonymous. I've had people say, I want to be completely anonymous, and I talk to them over the phone, and I put it down as an anonymous tip. I've had people tell me, well, I'm John Doe, but I don't want you to tell my name to anybody. That gives me the opportunity to take their information, maybe run it down, get back with them, let them know what I found out. And also, if I have any other information in the future, I can call them back and run this name or that name by them and see what they think or what direction that might take. So, we don't mention any names. Like I said, we're not going to mention any names in this broadcast. All the names are just locked up. They're all anonymous if they want to be. It is a little nerve-wracking, if you come forward with information that might lead to, prosecution in this case. I understand that, but we would do everything we could to protect that name. We do it every day on other cases. This one is just a little bit more in-depth, and we would keep it under lock and key.
Excellent. Last question, and then after the answer of this one, Sheriff, I'll have you go ahead and read your statement regarding this case. But can the Roger parent murder case be solved?
Yes.
Yes.
Without a doubt, it can be solved.
Yep. Someone either in St. Mary's or surrounding towns, because I've heard all the rumors, could be somebody local, could be maybe just driving through type thing. Back in the day, you got to remember, 703 was a pretty busy road. A lot of businesses between here and Salina, here in Wapak. It can be somebody knows, something. We have full support of the family behind us. Priority one is to get justice for them, but information is out there that I think could lead to this case being solved.
And Sheriff?
We've talked about some of this, but the murder of Roger Parent took place on December 29th, 1978 at approximately 11:55 p.m. On the day of the incident, Mary Brown, Mary Parent, Roger's wife at the time, reported that Roger was taking a nap on the couch at their home, and he received a phone call. As a result of that phone call, he got up and told Mary he had to go into work. That's the last time that Mary's seen Roger alive. There have been many leads ran down over the years, but this case still remains unsolved, as we've talked about here today. While there is new and evolving technology, we have exhausted what we have so far. We will continue to use the technology that is available and the services of the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the new technology afforded to them for any evidence we may already have or may get in the future. I still believe, from the information we have gathered over the years, that someone has information and knows who was involved with this case. Many of the Rogers family members are still with us today. Put yourself in their shoes. They live with this every day. We are appealing to the citizens of St. Mary's, the citizens of Auglaize County, to come forward with any information that you might have. Even if you do not think it's important, it may be. I was recently told that some people might be concerned that if they come forward now, they may be in trouble or look at charges being pressed against them for not saying something before. That is just not true, and we are not concerned about that. We want to solve this case for the family of Roger Parent and his friends and the community. Please, if you had any information on the case, call the detective's line at the Sheriff's Office at 419-739-6555. You can ask for Detective Tim Rammel, or you can also ask for Chief Deputy Mike Peterson or myself, and we'll gladly talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. As you so eloquently stated, this is about the Parent family. It's about bringing justice for the Parent family, as we've mentioned before, the community, for the county, so that justice can be served. Well, we've come to the end of our show. It is our hope at Rider Nation Station this podcast did entertain, educate, enlighten, and elevate your perspective about St. Mary's, Ohio. We hope a story has been told that augments the development of relationships old and new to promote growth for all who do, did, and will call St. Mary's, Ohio home. Again, I want to thank Sheriff Al Solomon, Chief Deputy Mike Peterson for their time and dedication to attempt to solve this 4-decade-old murder case and for putting the uniform on and serving the residents of Auglaize County. Thank you. Our next podcast will shed some light on Grand Lake St. Mary's history with Zach Farrell interviewing Denny Long about the history of Gordon State Park, an amusement park located in Villanova. I hope you think positively about our town, the town we did not inherit from our ancestors, but the town we borrowed from our grandchildren. Peace to you, my fellow St. Marians, past, present and future, always and always.
Thanks for watching another edition of Rider Nation Station, brought to you by Advanced Manufacturing Solutions, Plus One Professionals Real Estate, Laura Yelton State Farm Insurance, Minster Bank, The Evening Leader, and JT's Brew and Grill. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook. It's free. If you have any information regarding this case, please contact Chief Deputy Michael Peterson or Detective Tim Rammel at the Auglaize County Sheriff's Office, 419-739-6555.